They humiliated a stranger at the party, not knowing. He controlled a $500 deal of her company. No one noticed him at first. That was the strange part. In a ballroom glowing with crystal chandeliers, silk, gowns, and champagne glasses worth more than a month's rent, the man in the dark suit stood alone near the bar. His jacket was plain. No designer logo. No flashy watch. Just calm eyes. And a quiet presence that didn't beg for attention. Around him, laughter exploded. Executives clinked glasses. Deals were being whispered in corners. This wasn't just a party. It was Avery Collins' celebration night. Her tech company, Collins Dynamics, was on the verge of signing a $500 million partnership that would put her name on every business headline in America. And Avery knew it. She moved through the crowd like royalty, confident, sharp, untouchable. Then she saw him, standing too close, listening too quietly, watching too carefully. Her smile tightened. Who invited him? She whispered to one of her executives. No answer. The man turned slightly, as if he'd heard his name. But he hadn't. He simply lifted his glass, nodding politely as Avery passed. That nod did it. Avery stopped. The music faded just enough for nearby guests to sense something was wrong. She looked him up and down. The cheap tie, the scuffed shoes, the way he didn't belong. "Excuse me," she said loudly, her voice cutting through the room. "This is a private event." The man met her eyes calmly. "I was invited," he replied. A few executives chuckled. "Invited?" Avery laughed, sharp and cruel. "By who? The catering staff?" More laughter. Phones subtly lifted. People loved moments like this. The man stayed silent. That silence irritated her even more. "You know," she continued, swirling the red wine in her glass, "people like you always try to sneak into rooms you don't belong in." Then, without warning, she threw the wine. Red splashed across his white shirt. The stain spread instantly. Gasps echoed. Someone laughed too loudly. For the first time, the man looked down at his shirt, then back at her. Still calm, still quiet. The room waited for him to explode. He didn't. Instead, he slowly reached into his inner pocket. Avery smirked. "What? You going to complain to security?" At that exact moment, the music stopped completely, because on the massive screen behind them, meant to display the company's celebration. Video. A name suddenly appeared. A name very few people in the room recognized. But the lawyers standing near the exit? They froze. The man looked at Avery one last time and said softly, "I don't think you realize whose company this deal actually belongs to." Silence. Pure, terrifying silence. Before you find out who he really is and why the lawyers stopped breathing. Like the video. Comment what you think is about to happen and subscribe. Because this story turns brutal. Avery's smile slowly disappeared. And that was only the beginning. No one spoke. The room that had been alive just minutes ago felt frozen in time. Avery Collins stared at the man she had just humiliated, wine still dripping from his shirt, as the screen behind them remained lit with a single line of text. Majority stakeholder, Daniel Wright Capital. Whispers exploded. "That's impossible. Daniel Wright. That Daniel Wright? Oh my God." The man slowly removed his stained jacket and handed it to a waiter. "Yes," he said calmly. "That Daniel Wright." Avery felt her throat tighten. Daniel Wright wasn't just an investor. He was known in finance circles as the man who quietly bought companies before they knew they were being bought. He never attended parties, never did interviews. And when he walked away from a deal, companies collapsed. "You—" Avery's voice cracked. "You're lying." Daniel turned slightly toward the group of lawyers near the door. "Counsel," he said. 3 lawyers stepped forward instantly. One of them, a senior partner, cleared his throat. "Mr. Wright controls 51% of Collins. Dynamics through a blind trust finalized 6 months ago." The room erupted. Avery staggered back. "That's not possible," she shouted. "I built this company." Daniel nodded. "You did, and you did it well. That's why I invested." He paused. "And tonight was my final evaluation." The word evaluation landed like a hammer. Avery's face drained of color. "You embarrassed a guest," Daniel continued calmly. "You publicly humiliated someone without knowing who they were. You showed cruelty where leadership was required." He glanced at the red stain on his shirt. "And you made your decision. Over a glass of wine." One of Avery's executives whispered, "We're done." Daniel turned to the lawyers again. "Cancel the partnership," he said. Just like that. "A $500 million deal? Gone." The head lawyer nodded immediately. Already in motion. Avery dropped to her knees. "No, please," she whispered. "This company is my life." Daniel looked at her for a long moment. "I know," he said quietly. "That's why I needed to know who you really were." He turned to leave. As he walked past her, he stopped. "You could have asked my name," he said softly. "Instead, you chose cruelty." The doors closed behind him. No music, no applause, no cameras flashing, only silence. Avery remained on the floor, surrounded by executives who would not meet her eyes. The party was over, not with shouting, but with truth. As if this ending shocked you, comment the moment that hits you hardest and subscribe, because the next story is even more intense. Sometimes one moment reveals everything.